In this video we are going to create our first simple volumetric sphere. We are going to move our default cube on the side, or you can delete it with the X key. Instead, we will add an icosphere, but it may also be a UV sphere. We can increase the subdivision to 3, but it is not crucial to do so. Now we can drag out a new 3D viewport window. We can collapse the tool shelf in our right viewport with the T hotkey. After, we can change the left viewport window to the node editor window. With the N hotkey, we can hide the properties panel in the node editor. We can add the basic default material via the properties panel, which would be the basic default shader. You can see the corresponding nodes being added in the node editor as well. Now we can already switch the viewport rendering type to the Cycles render engine. We can also change the background color to black via the world settings in the properties panel. Then we can delete the diffuse shader in the node editor. Since there is no shader attached to the material output node, the object will appear as not existing. In the beginning, there is no need to analyze what you are adding and connecting. It is better to first create the shader and then analyze and experiment with the nodes. To begin, we can add the Emission Shader. You can change the area of the border render with Ctrl B so that you can save on some render time. I recommend increasing the window space of your node editor since we will be adding a lot of nodes. Then we can add the color ramp node and make the connections as demonstrated. One quick tip is to wait with fiddling with the nodes just yet. Wait till we finish the shader first. Then we add a Voronoi texture node. After adding the texture node, you can see the change right away. Then we can add the gradient texture. This texture will be important throughout all of the projects. Throughout this course, we will mostly set the gradient type of our gradient node to quadratic sphere. This is needed to create the fading sphere effect. You can already see the spherical transition. However, it is not yet centered, which we will do later with another node. Now we will add the mapping node. Not entirely crucial for this shader, but I advise you to make a habit of adding it. The last node that we are going to add is the texture coordinate node. This node is always the beginning node or the end node, depending on your perspective. After adding the texture coordinate node, you can connect the object socket with the mapping node. This way the shader will be positioned at the center of the object. Now we have added all the needed nodes. Now it's time to make some small adjustment to some nodes to create the blue sphere that was shown in the beginning. The first adjustment that we can make is to change the scale of the Voronoi texture to 0.2. You will notice that the rings disappear to make place for just a single fade-out effect. We can change the color to blue, because I like the color blue. You change the position of the left handle in the color ramp to 0.003. This is needed to give the edge a better fade transition to black. We can change the emission strength to increase the light intensity. We can change the color ramp settings to ease. Also, we can increase the emission strength even more. You can play around with the emission strength to get the desired intensity. You can also move the right handle of the color ramp node to adjust the fading of your sphere. The best way to get the hang of the node and its settings is to play around and see the result in real time with the cycles viewport rendering. You can also change the color of the sphere in the color ramp by clicking on the color when having the right handle selected. With the color wheel you can choose from the complete color palette. Here you can clearly see that the shader does not originate from the object's polygons, but it originates from inside the object, from its volume. You can also experiment a bit with the gradient texture node to see what each setting does to our shader. This will increase your understanding of what each setting does. With just a spherical setting, the fading is a bit rougher than with quadratic sphere. Playing around with both the spherical and quadratic spherical in combination with the emission strength will enable you to tweak your fading quite a bit. Well, that was it for this video. In the next one, we will be making a different volumetric sphere, which is slightly more complicated to construct. Thank you for watching.